Hey everybody, this is Jeffrey with ThemeForce.net, and we have a new Ask JW. This time it's on how to add those little bars to the top of your website when you need to make an announcement. Something like this. Take a look at the demo, and you load the page, and they add this little bar to let you know maybe we're working on the site or something like that. And then if you want, then you can go to click on the top, and it'll get rid of it. So that's what we're going to learn how to build today. We're going to create a little jQuery plugin wrapper that'll be perfect for this. So I'm going to close each of these pages out, and this is the demo I just showed you. What I'm going to do here is we're going to take a working free template. That way we can work on an actual site, and I'm going to go ahead and delete the JS folder for the example. That way we can start from scratch. And I'll bring it into TextMate, and just to show you what we have at this point, we just have a free template that I downloaded from the web. You don't even need to worry about it, but we do need to import some scripts at the very bottom. So the first one is going to be jQuery, of course. The second one is going to be a scripts folder a script file that we're going to create. And the final one is going to be our actual plugin. So we haven't created any of these yet, but we'll do JS, and we're going to call this jwannounce.js. And I'm going to get rid of these car sets. Okay, and that should be good. So now let's go ahead and create these files. So I'm going to add a new folder, and we'll call it JS, and now a new file. And this first one is going to be jwannounce.js, and the next one is just going to be our regular scripts.js file. Okay, so let's begin by figuring out how we are going to call it. So we will want to put it onto the body since it's going to display at the very top, and we're going to call jwannounce. And we'd like to be able to pass in some parameters if we want. The first one that we should pass in is maybe the class name. And the class name will apply when we add that bar. They need to be able to style it, so we're going to add a class to that bar. So we'll do class name, and by default we'll call it notice. And the next one is going to be text. What are we going to display within this bar? By default it's going to be null. And the final one is going to be site width. And this is if they have a centered fixed layout, we need to know the width. That way we can make sure that we center the text within the bar on the page. And we'll call that site width. And that's going to be null by default, but in reality we would say something like currently updating my website, please check back later. Thanks. Okay, and then site width we need to figure out actually what the site width of this one is. So if I use the web developer toolbar, we can see it's 747 pixels, and I'm going to paste that in. Okay, and that should just be fine for our call. So now let's go ahead and create. This is just a snippet that I have that allows me to create plugins much more quickly. All we're doing is we're wrapping our function within a self-invoking anonymous function. That way we can use the jQuery symbol without it clashing with anything. Next we're going to call jQuery.prototype, and the name of our plugin is jwannounce. It's going to be equal to a function. And we're going to pass in the options that we created here. So what we'll do is, just to make this shorter, we'll do var defaults. We'll call it options instead, and it's going to be jQuery.extend. And here we need to add our defaults again. Class name is going to be notice. Text is null. And site width is going to be null as well. And let's see, jQuery.extend. So we're going to take all of that, and we are going to extend it over what we currently have. Okay, so basically we create a variable called options, which is an object, and we take these base default options that we have, and we take whatever the user passes in, and we override them, and then we store them back into the options object. Okay. So next we are going to return for each item that is passed to this plugin. I don't even think we need to cache this. This is going to be a fairly simple plugin. The first thing that we want to do is get the body element represented by this, and we're going to prepend and we're going to add a div. So we're going to call it div class equals, and the user is going to specify what the class is, remember, through class name. So I'm going to append options.class name and close that out. Okay. And another thing I usually like to do is just do a console log to make sure that my plugin is being called. So let's go back and load this in the page and open up Firefox, and we are already getting an error. Let's go back, and we should close out the paragraph tag there. And let's see. Well, it is being called. It's probably we just forgot a comma or something. So we know it's working. And of course that should be like so, and that should do it. There we go. So it is working. Let's continue on. We've prepended our div with the class of, in this case, notice. The next thing we want to do, and if you want to check to make sure that's going, let's go to Firebug, HTML body, and you can see there we have added that div. So the next step is let's create a variable, and we're going to call it announce div, and this is going to be equal to that div that we just created. So we're going to do jQuery, and we're going to append to the name of the class once again, text class name, and then finally, and we're caching that just so we don't have to call it and search through the DOM for that div every single time we call it. So we're going to do announce div, and now we're going to append another one. And the reason we're doing this is because we want the bar to stretch for the entire window, but we still want the text to be centered and aligned with this actual website. So we actually have to have an outer div and then an inner div in order to do that. And we're going to append, and this time we're just going to do a generic div, and we're going to do options.text, and if you remember, that's equal to what the user passes in, something about their website being worked on or something like that. And we're going to append, and then we're going to do children, and we're going to get that div that we just appended. We're adding the pseudo last just in case there's any other divs that we would need to worry about. This makes sure we get the very last one. It may not be necessary. And we're going to do CSS, and we're going to do the width of this is going to be options.site width, and that's what the user passes in, and this will be equal to the width of the user's website, assuming it's a fixed width. And also we need to set margins equal to auto, and that'll make sure that it actually centers that on the page. Okay, that should be good. The next one, we're going to hit end because we are done working with this new div that we created. And now we're going to prepend, we need to prepend a close button. So we'll just put that within something like a span. Span class equals, and we'll just give it something like close, and use a big letter X to represent the close button. Okay. Now we're going to do children, and we're going to get that close button that we just created. And now we're going to do some CSS for that. And we don't want to do anything too visual because that should be the user's job. We're just doing the functionality here. But there are some things that are really required to make it work. Position, it needs to be positioned absolutely. And we know that when the user hovers over it, they need to know that they can click on it. So we're going to change the cursor to pointer. And the final one, by default, we don't want it to display. We only want this X to display if the user hovers over the bar. So by default, I'm going to set the display to none. Okay, and then finally we're done working with that, so we're going to end. Look how we can continue chaining as much as we possibly can. That way we don't have to keep searching through the DOM. We just chain, and then when we need to go back up, we just hit end to let jQuery know that we're done working with the child. We go back. So it's kind of a nice little feature we can do. The next one we're going to do is hover, when the user hovers over this bar. So .hover, and the hover method accepts two functions. The first one is when they hover over, and the next one is when they hover out. So when they hover over it, we're going to do this. Remember, this is referring to announce div, and announce div is referring to that wrapping div with a class of notice. So we're going to do this dot children, and we're going to get that close X, and we're going to show it because when they hover over the bar, we need to give them some feedback to know you can close this if you want. So we're going to show that immediately, and then when they click on that X, we need to get rid of it and close out that bar. So I'm going to scroll down, and we'll do announce div, and we're going to slide it up, and we could let the user decide how fast, but I don't think it's really necessary when it's so small. We'll do something like 250 milliseconds, and when that's completed, we're going to get this, remove, okay, and that just completely gets rid of the div as soon as it's done sliding up. That way we don't end up with a bunch of them. And finally, when they function, do get close dot hide. So basically, when they hover over the bar, we're going to get that X button, and we're going to show it. And then when they click on it, we are going to slide the bar up, and we're going to get rid of the X button and the bar. And when they hover off of the bar, we're just going to get that little X, that X span tag, and hide it because they have hovered off. And that should be pretty close to what we need. Let's come here and refresh the page, and we get two errors. So hopefully they're easy ones. A missing semicolon before the statement var announce div. Let's go here, at the very top. There we go. Whoops. And another one. I'm talking so fast. Missing colon after property display none. Yep. That's what happens. You're so busy talking, you don't even see these little mistakes. And auto is not defined. Of course it's not. Okay. And let's see what we have. So nothing is showing up right now. Let's check HTML and see if it was added. So we've added our div with the class of notice. And it looks like, look at that extra space we have. We don't need that. There we go. Good. And look, it's working. So if I zoom all the way out, now I have added a little bit of styles, but if we hover over it, you can see that X button shows up. If we click on it, it hides. So let's take a look at what's going on with the DOM here. There we go. So you can see, let's refresh the page one more time and open it up. So we've added the X button, and the reason we've done that is because it doesn't make too much sense every time they hover over it to add a new element to the DOM. It's easier if we just do it one time, and then we can change the CSS and show it or hide it depending on whether they hover over it. And that's the reason we did that. You can see here we added a nested div, and remember, the notice div allows us to have the blue background for the entire window, but then in order to have the main area centered, we have to nest another div, and that div we set the width equal to whatever the user passed in, and then we added margins to auto to make sure that it was centered on the page. There, within it, we added the text that we added, and it all looks pretty good. So when we hover over it, you can see that the close button, we changed it to show, and if I click on it, it gets rid of it entirely. Okay, pretty neat. So just to show you, I've already referenced a style sheet here from our demo, but if I get rid of that, let's see what we get by default. So by default, we just get a little here, so it has the functionality, and then all you would need to do is within your style sheet, let's go to the very bottom. We know we added it as a class of notice, and we could do background blue, color, white, zoom out. But anyways, and then you could begin styling it however you wanted. Padding, 5 pixels, you know, things like that. Height, 50 pixels, line height equals 50 pixels. Padding left, you know, you could play around with it as much as you wanted. Okay, and then we have our X, you click it, closes. So the functionality is all there. You can just style it however you want. So remember, the way you call it is you just add it to the body. You call the name of the plugin as JW Announce, and you can add a class name. So if we wanted to change this to announcement, Then within your style sheet, you would simply do announcement. And then be sure to set the text and the width of your site, and that's really it. It's a simple plugin. It's quick. Once we packed it, this would probably be, $2K or something like that, and it's a nice way where anytime you need to add an announcement to your site, you do 3 lines of code and it's all set. So thank you guys so much for watching, and let me know if you have any questions. Thanks. Bye.